Once again, our friends at the Hotchkiss Library have put together an interesting program coming up. It is Spooked, the Trump Dossier, Black Cube, and the Rise of Private Spies with Barry Meier. Now, this is going to be happening at the Hotchkiss Library lawn. Brian Ross will be interviewing Barry Meier, author of the book Spooked, on Friday, June 3rd, on the lawn at 7 p.m. at the Hotchkiss Library. We spent a few minutes talking with Barry about the book, Spooked.
Marshall, thanks so much for having me on.
You're a former reporter for the New York Times. Let's go over your background a little bit for people that aren't really aware of it. Were you an investigative reporter, and how did you get into writing and becoming a member of the Times to begin with?
So I joined the Times back in 1989, and yes, I'd like to consider myself an investigative reporter. I mean, not everybody might, but sort of the stories and books that I'm most proud of. I was the first journalist that kind of uncovered the illegal marketing of the drug OxyContin by Purdue Pharma, and in 2003 wrote a book about it called Painkiller, which has gone on to kind of become the foundational book for the many, many books that have since followed. I did a variety of public health reporting for the New York Times, and in the 2016 presidential campaign, I also did a lot of political reporting. My last story for the Times actually was sort of a wild and crazy one. I broke the story about the Nexium cult up in Albany. I don't know if you remember that. This was the group that was branding women.
Yep.
And, doing all kinds of crazy activities. And I retired from the Times at the end of 2017 and was thinking about what to do next. And so right about that time, there were a number of big news events that had just broken. One involved the so-called Steele Dossier about the alleged connections between Donald Trump and his campaign members with the Kremlin. Another was the Harvey Weinstein case, and a scandal involving a once high-flying medical testing company called Theranos had also just broken. And I decided that, when I started looking at these stories, I realized that there was kind of a hidden thread that connected all of them, and that in every one of these cases, private intelligence firms, or private spies, as I refer to them as in the book, were digging up all kinds of information about, the adversaries of people, the women that were suing Harvey Weinstein, so on and so forth. So I thought it would be a great time just to kind of flip the script and investigate the investigations industry.
And what's terrific about that idea, Barry, is the fact that nowadays, with the internet and social media, unfortunately, social media has become a prime source for people to get their news from. So I would estimate that 70% on people on social media like Facebook and Twitter don't realize the difference between a disinformation story and real news, and that has become a problem that we see now has manifested itself. Just take a look at the country right now.
Well, we're awash in it, and it's coming from both sides of the political spectrum. The claims that Donald Trump won the election, first and foremost. All kinds of information. And, what I got interested in, and what I tried to delve into in the book, is how the media, particularly when it came to the Steele dossier, scrutinized that material before it ran with it and wrote stories about it, because I remember when I was first reporting about the drug OxyContin, many other journalists were kind of accepting at face value the claims that there was supposed science backing the use of this drug. And these are claims that were being put out by the drug's manufacturer, Purdue Pharma. And I was sort of appalled that no journalist had gone back and looked at these studies. And when I did, I discovered that they were being totally misrepresented by the manufacturer. And so when it came to the dossier and the allegations in there, people who were reporting about it, and believe me, there was tons of reasons to be suspicious of Donald Trump, suspicious of his ties to Russia. And God knows, many journalists wanted to believe that these claims of collusion between the Trump campaign and Moscow were true. But unfortunately, they kind of jumped ahead of the normal reporting process, which is, let's go out, let's vet this evidence, let's determine whether it's true or not, and then let's decide where to go from there.
That's so interesting and true. I can remember watching 60 Minutes years ago, and they did a segment on, and you can Google this and find it, on a miracle drug, and that miracle drug was OxyContin, and how it stopped pain, and how it was going to be a game changer. So the spreading of fake news not only goes in social media, like you say, but given to reporters. And you're right. It seems like today newspapers, editors, don't go that extra mile to find something's confirmed. They just pick up a story and run with it because they want to get the story before anybody else gets it on social media, and that opens the door for just a whole bunch of bad decisions that people will make because the information they think is accurate is not.
I felt like, as you point out, in the case of OxyContin, look, it was a valuable drug. It is a valuable drug. It certainly has legitimate uses within a very limited medical sphere, but that's not the way that Purdue Pharma promoted it. They promoted it to, sports medicine doctors, dentists, general practitioners, for use in situations where a high-powered narcotic really was ill-advisable given, the risks of addiction and other downsides it posed. And, all reporters had to do was go back, as I did, into these publicly available archives and find these studies, and they would see that these claims that were being made had no basis in scientific fact. Similarly, with the dossier, there were many claims in it, many really kind of wild and appealing claims, that there was a P-tape showing Donald Trump cavorting in the Moscow Ritz-Carlton, that Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's lawyer and henchman, met in Prague with Russian operatives, so on and so forth. And many, for the large part, many of these claims in the dossier either have not been proven true or have been shown to be false. And as you'll recall, and maybe your listeners will also recall, many of us, myself included, were kind of fascinated by this story. It became an obsession for the media for 3 years. And, what I try to explore in the book is how and why did this happen, and how can we as journalists kind of make sure something like this doesn't happen again.
Spooked, the Trump Dossier, Black Cube, and the Rise of Private Spies with Barry Meier. Now, this is going to be happening at the Hotchkiss Library lawn. Brian Ross will be interviewing Barry Meier, author of the book Spooked, on Friday, June 3rd on the lawn at 7 p.m.
But one of the things I was sort of struck by as I was kind of looking back at the coverage of the dossier, and believe me, the dossier is just one data point in a much broader universe that covers, news on all parts of the political media spectrum. But one catchphrase that I kept coming across is something, a formulation that went along the lines of, well, it hasn't been proven true yet, but who knows? As if to say that was adequate in, to give an allegation credence. And, that's the way many, it's believed or it's suspected or, things that are not presenting you with why is it believed? Why is it suspected? What is the evidence to show that this allegation has a basis in fact? That's not to say that, you as a journalist or, aren't restricted from reporting on things that have yet to be proven, but you do need to tell the reader what you know about the evidence supporting that claim. And also, I believe that there's an obligation to sort of give the reader, the listener, the viewer, whomever it might be, some insight into where these allegations are coming from. Did I wake up in the morning and just imagine them? Or are they coming from people who have a vested interest in promoting them and may maybe are getting paid to try to plant these allegations in the media?
And you're so right about that. When you look at what political, just in this country, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have thousands of employees that sit in rooms just digging up any sort of material that they can find. But it's funny when you talk about the dossier that you're talking about. When I first heard about it and read about it, what came to my mind was, oh, geez, this is like an FBI dossier, and this is like it's going to contain everything that they think happens, not necessarily that actually has happened, and that's why we pay people a lot more money and put them in a lot more serious positions to figure out what's accurate and what's not accurate. And that's why releasing the dossier the way it was released made it seem quasi-official to people.
Exactly, because the FBI had received it. Yeah. It had been given to the FBI in some ways to try to get it to become public. But, if you have any familiarity with actual intelligence agency documents, typically everything within those documents is fairly closely annotated to, provide insight into, the degree of veracity that an analyst will give to a claim. They're mildly certain about it. It's possibly true. It's all hedged and annotated. Here, it was kind of stated right out there, and then it was dressed up in spy talk, because if you look at the dossier, all this information is coming from source A, source B, source D, E, F. Kind of looks very spooky, and the general reader is going to think, wow, this looks like the real deal. Then we come to learn a couple of years later that the person who was hired by Christopher Steele, the ex-MI6 agent who was commissioned to gather this information, wasn't a real spy, had no experience of a spy, but was sort of a former Russian-born lawyer who had drifted into the private intelligence industry and then gone back to Russia and was talking over drinks and meals with his buddies there. And that's where he was gathering this, supposedly high-level intelligence from.
And also, you take people. We're such a media-driven society. You take people that have watched James Bond movies over the years and all these other spy movies, and it lends a certain degree of credibility to things like this.
Well, if you walk into a room and there's a guy sitting there and you're introduced to him as an former MI6 agent, and he is dressed impeccably, he looks and acts the part, you may believe him more than if you walk into a room and you're introduced to the guy who collected the information for him, who looks maybe kind of schlumpy, is a lot younger, has no experience in intelligence gathering, and may tell you, as he subsequently told the FBI, that he really wasn't sure about the veracity of the information he collected. So, like if you come into contact with that guy, as a journalist, you're probably going to get up, say thank you, and leave the room.
Once again, we're speaking with Barry Meier. Spooked, the Trump Dossier, Black Cube, and the Rise of Private Spies with Barry Meier. Now, this is going to be happening at the Hotchkiss Library lawn. Brian Ross will be interviewing Barry Meier, author of the book Spooked, on Friday, June 3rd, on the lawn at 7 p.m. Well, what do we do as a country, as individuals, as businesses, as radio stations, television stations, and newspapers? What do we do with this problem of fake news?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's important to be transparent with your audience about where this information is coming from, who has a vested interest in getting it out there. As a journalist, you often rely on sources, and you often give sources anonymity because disclosing who they are might jeopardize their life, their careers, what have you. And so, it's not that we as journalists need to stop dealing with people on an anonymous basis. I think we have to be more careful about whom we grant anonymity to, and to the degree that it is possible, make the audience aware that this information is coming from someone with a vested interest in getting it out there, and that interest might be opposed to the subject of the story, that they were hired to maybe dig up dirt on them or whatever the case may be. So I think, there's something to be said for, pulling back the curtain and showing how the media interacts with private intelligence agencies and other sources. And that's something that I tried to do in the book.
Spooked, the Trump Dossier, Black Cube, and the Rise of Private Spies with Barry Meier. Now, this is going to be happening at the Hotchkiss Library lawn. Brian Ross will be interviewing Barry Meier, author of the book Spooked, on Friday, June 3rd, on the lawn at 7 p.m. HotchkissLibrary.org for more information. And as you sit here now talking with me and we look ahead, what's on your radar next for you when you take a look at things like this? Are there any other big stories out there about to break which could bring a cavalcade of, once again, fake news?
I think we're so surrounded by them at this point that, it's just, we're drowning in it. We have all the stories about the election. We have these supposed audits going on in places like Arizona. I just read a story in the Times the other day about how the Eric Prince, the former head of the mercenary company Blackwater, hired a British spy, another ex-British spy, to train operatives for this right-wing organization called Project Veritas, so they would be better skilled at deceiving. Apparently, the purpose was to skill them to better fool unsuspecting people they were interacting with. So, there's all this information that's being gathered, that's being manipulated, that's being dropped on us. And I think we just need to take a deep breath as listeners and think about, if I was sitting on a bar stool and someone told me this story and we're in a restaurant, would I believe it? And why, just because it's coming to me through the media, do I believe it anymore?
Well, once again, it's your chance to hear this in person. Spooked, the Trump Dossier, Black Cube, and the Rise of Private Spies with Barry Meier. Now, this is going to be happening at the Hotchkiss Library lawn. Brian Ross will be interviewing Barry Meier, author of the book Spooked, on Friday, June 3rd. Barry, thanks for spending a few minutes with us today.
Marshall, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.